was on Memorial Day. Bill Walton, the UCLA legend, died of cancer at the age of 71. He, as I'm sure you know, spent his final years as an entertaining color analyst for ESPN. But before that, he was quite literally one of the best basketball players in the world. He was a three-time National Player of the Year at UCLA, a two-time national champion at UCLA, two-time NBA champion with the Blazers and Celtics, a two-time NBA All-Star, Finals MVP in 1977, League MVP in 1978. You know, poor health robbed him of so much, both in basketball and just life in general. But when he was healthy enough to do his job, either on the court or later in life off of it, he was just truly excellent at his job. KB, I won't ask you for your memories of Bill Walton as a player because you're a young fella and you shouldn't have any. But when I say Bill Walton, what pops into your head?
A ray of light is what pops into my head, man. Over the years covering college basketball, I love the sport. You get to like the heart of conference play, it can feel like a little bit of a slog, right? You're staying up all day, you're staying up all night watching Pac-12 games, and it's like it can just be kind of a challenge sometimes to power through. And I just remember a lot of times it's like a long day. You're logging in, to the Pac-12 network on your television, of course, or on your refrigerator if you're GP. And Bill Walton and Dave Pasch are there, man. And I just like some of the best and most fond memories watching basketball and being entertained from Bill Walton. After a long day of covering sports, I'd turn it on and he's eating a fully lit cupcake next to Dave Pasch, or talking about the earth or nature, or about life. And he could be serious and he could be sincere, and he had so many different levels and ranges that he was such a deep person, and the way that he experienced things, I think, was very genuine. And it certainly, I think it came natural for him to be kind of an entertainer, but that's who he was. And there was an ESPN interview that I think is probably going viral on Twitter, and one quote that I saw from it was, the sun comes up every day, and my approach is, what can I do to make things better for as many people as possible? And I feel like that's it's cliche, and certainly I like if I could adapt that and apply it, that's a great way to live. But it really felt like he genuinely felt that way. He genuinely applied that, and he lived by that. And he was just a joyful person who was fun to watch. By all accounts, everyone who experienced him, whether it's working with him or just being a friend, or playing on a Pac-12 team and him calling one of your games, like everyone who experienced him just adored him. Genuine, authentic to who he was at all times. Sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was downright weird. Always, though, it was entertaining. And I will miss Bill Walton in college basketball. Very thoughtful, curious, compassionate, caring. Just a great human being who, it feels like the world is a slightly worse place because he's not here anymore.
Yeah, it was just sort of obviously a sad thing to learn. I didn't know Bill well. I met him a few times, was around him a few times. I certainly wasn't in his circle. I didn't realize that the end was so near. And so when I saw it, I was like, what? And, then, I guess I knew he had been sick. I don't know. It wasn't something I was expecting to see on Memorial Day. So when I saw it, it was, sad, because I did know Luke, his son, a little bit. And I'm with you on Bill as a broadcaster. I know that it got sometimes a little too off the rails for some folks, but man, I can appreciate, a traditional color analyst who's just there talking about, how we're guarding ball screens and just breaking down the game. Like, I love that stuff. Like, I think Tim Legler when he goes on ESPN post game. Like if I don't watch those things live, I watch them the next morning because I just think he's so good, breaking down exactly what is happening in a basketball game.
Yes.
And I have a real appetite for that. Like I consume it, I enjoy it, but I don't need it every minute of every game. At the end of the day, I'm watching a basketball game on television. I'd like to enjoy it, and Bill Walton made me enjoy it more than I otherwise would have by being exactly the opposite of what Tim Legler would do if on a game, right? Like Tim's there to talk about basketball, and Bill, it felt like sometimes, was there to talk about anything other than basketball. And I would sometimes you hear him go on these little things, and he just starts telling a story. It starts in this little place. The next thing you know, he's telling an incredible 2-minute story. And it's like, how does he know all this stuff? Like, how does a person even know all these things? And he's just sort of, casually telling them, or at least it came across that way. It could have you never know the work people put into these things, but the way it came across is like, oh, here's Bill Walton just telling another wild story that's got nothing to do with this basketball game, but somehow this is perfect. I enjoyed it. And then, of course, I was introduced to him just as a figure very early in life, based on where I grew up, because he had maybe the greatest college basketball game ever.
Yeah.
In the national championship game against Memphis State University. Now, of course, the University of Memphis. So when I'm growing up in, this area, and everybody here is a Tiger basketball fan, Keith Lee and Andre Turner, or pushing the Tigers to the 1985 Final Four. It's like, this is the first time they're in the Final Four since the last time. The last time was 73. And you remember what happened then? Oh, that's the Bill Walton game. He was 21 of 22 from the field.
It's insane.
21 of 22 from the field, 44 points, 13 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block. That was in the national championship game. UCLA 87, Memphis State 66. I believe the game was tied at halftime, and then UCLA just ran away from them. But 21 of 22 from the field. I mean, it's outrageous. So he was like he's just always been a figure in just conversations that happened around me. And even then you go like, Memphis is back in the Final Four in 2008. It's the first time since 85 and only third time in history. The first was 73. Always circles back to that's the Bill Walton game. And Walton, he obviously talked about this his whole life, or at least he gets asked about it his whole life. And I saw one quote as I was reading about it last night. He said John Wooden was talking to him at some point after that game or later in life or whenever. But this is Bill Walton telling the story. He said, Coach Wooden looked at me and he said, Walton, I used to think you were a good player until you missed that one shot against Memphis State. So that was just a sweet little quote. So, I mean, it's hard for, I think, younger people to understand like what this looked like back then, because Bill Walton comes to college basketball today. We get him for 1 year. That's it. I mean, it's almost like amazing that we had 2-time National Player of the Year, Zach Edey. Well, like Bill Walton was 3-time National Player of the Year. Like this was another level to everything. Truly, like he was on the NBA's all-time greatest 50 team, top 75 team. Genuinely one of the greatest basketball players to ever live, who had an incredible career post basketball. And you mentioned just such a ray of light, and he really did come across that way. And he had an incredible approach to life. But even he has acknowledged that he did struggle too, and was in a dark place for some time, and even contemplated ending his life at one point, which is obviously something that's been in the news this weekend in sports because of a tragedy on the PGA Tour. And so I just, he's just a fascinating character who lived a fascinating life. And man, it sucks that it only lasted 71 years. Life's not fair, obviously. But he made an incredible impact that and has a lasting legacy. And like I said, I didn't know him particularly well, but I was a real fan of his work and his approach to life. And I am friends with a lot of people who were close to him and loved him dearly, and so obviously our thoughts are with those people.
Yeah, and there was a lot of death over the weekend, and it's heavy. It's heavy to think about the Grayson Murray and Bill Walton, Harry Higgs, who won on the
Yeah.
Corn Ferry Tour this weekend. I wrote it down just because I didn't think we'd probably mention the tragedy on the PGA Tour. But Harry Higgs, after he won this weekend, I thought he said something that really stuck with me. He said, "I would challenge everybody here. I'm going to do this myself as well. Say something nice to someone you love, and make it a point to say something nice to someone you do not even know. The world is a very difficult place. The world is difficult and only getting more difficult. So everybody could be a difference. Brighten up someone's day. It could mean the world." And I think just thinking about that and thinking about it in the context of Bill Walton's death, like that's how he lived his life. He was someone who always brightened someone's day. He always brightened my day when he popped on the television, just because I had absolutely no idea what he was going to say, what he was going to talk about. But love each other, love the people around you, love the people that you don't know, and that stuck with me. That's something I'm going to think about for a long time.
And no, I watched the Harry Higgs clip. I thought he was great and like clearly just off the cuff, and a guy who like he knows Grayson, and like they probably grinded it out, and spent a lot of days and nights together. And I've been there. You're like, I'll check in on him tomorrow, or I'm sure he'll be okay. And then it's just not. And so I thought that was incredible. It was sort of funny. Like he says, Harry Hicks is like, hey, just take the time to say something nice to somebody you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Try to make somebody feel better. And I'm like, man, what a great message. And I went to sleep, and I woke up, and the first tweet I saw this morning from somebody was like, these rankings are just as lazy as always. I'm like, Harry Higgs is telling people to be nice, and some other guy, the first thing he does when he wakes up is tell me how my rankings suck.
Oh my God. Never fails.
So not everybody is subscribed to the Harry Higgs way of life yet, but hopefully we'll get there. Hopefully we'll take a step in the right direction at some point soon.
I hope so.